Hey there, I'm Jonathan Gordon, and in this visual design course, you will learn the fundamental skills and techniques necessary to work with Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, and Adobe InDesign. First, in Adobe Photoshop, you will learn how to create and edit digital images using tools such as selection and masking. Then you'll go into image correction and retouching. We're going to look at layers and compositing, typography and design, and more. In Illustrator, you'll learn how to create digital illustrations and designs using vector shapes and paths. Then you'll look into color and gradients, typography and design, exporting and sharing, plus a myriad of other actions to produce incredible designs. Lastly, in InDesign, you'll learn how to create professional quality print and digital publications, such as books, magazines, brochures, and ebooks, using tools such as document setup, layout and design, typography and formatting, printing and exporting, and various other ways to create eye-catching projects. Overall, by the end of the course, you'll have a solid foundation in visual design and a good understanding in how to use these three powerful Adobe software programs to create and edit digital images, illustrations, and publications. To ensure that the tools, panels, measurements, interface, and other settings function exactly as described in each of the course's lessons, you will need to reset the default preferences and settings for each software program. All right, you ready? So let's get started with this amazing visual design course. All right, here we have Adobe Photoshop. It's a powerful image editing software that allows designers to create and manipulate digital images. In this course, you'll learn the fundamentals of Photoshop. First, you'll look at navigation and the interface, and you'll learn how to navigate through Photoshop's interface. You'll be able to customize it to your preferences, which will allow you to work more efficiently. You'll look at selection and masking. Here, you'll learn how to select parts of an image and mask them to create complex compositions. Then, one of my favorite is image correction and retouching. You'll learn how to correct color, exposure, and other image imperfections, as well as how to retouch portraits and remove unwanted objects. Then what's really important is layers and compositing. You'll learn how to work with layers, blend modes, and other tools to create complex compositions from multiple images. Then don't forget typography and design. You'll learn how to use Photoshop to create text effects, design layouts, and add graphic elements to your images. Overall, by the end of the course, you'll have a solid understanding of the tools and techniques necessary to create and edit digital images in Photoshop. Remember I mentioned that you need to make sure you reset the default preferences and settings for each program? Well, let's talk about that now. For Adobe Photoshop, while starting the program, hold down Control-Alt-Shift on Windows or Command-Option-Shift on macOS to reset the default settings. Click Yes in the dialog that asks, delete the Adobe Photoshop settings file, and then you'll be good to go.
To begin, you'll start Adobe Photoshop and reset the default preferences. Click the Adobe Photoshop 2023 icon in your Start menu on Windows or the Launchpad or Dock on macOS, and then simultaneously hold down Control, Alt, and Shift on Windows or Command, Option, and Shift on macOS to reset the default settings. If you don't see Adobe Photoshop 2023, type Photoshop into the search box in the taskbar on Windows or in Spotlight on Mac OS, and when the Adobe Photoshop 2023 application icon appears, select it and press Enter or Return. When prompted, click Yes to confirm that you want to delete the Adobe Photoshop settings file. Choose Open from the File menu. If a dialog box appears that says Cloud Documents at the top, click On Your Computer at the bottom of the dialog box. Navigate to the Lesson 1 folder in the Lessons folder that you copied to your hard drive from the peachpit.com website. Select the 01end.psd file and click Open. Click OK if the Embedded Profile Mismatch dialog box appears, and click No if a message about updating text layers appears. Choose Close from the File menu, or click the Close button, the little X next to the file name, on the tab of the document window. Do not close Photoshop and don't save changes to the document. The file name is added to the recent list on the home screen. Choose Open from the File menu, navigate to the Lesson 1 folder, and double-click the 01start.psd file to open it. The 01start.psd file contains the background image and a ribbon graphic that you used to create the birthday card that you viewed in the end file. Click the double arrows just above the Tools panel to toggle to a double column view, which might be better for smaller displays such as those on laptops. Click the double arrows again to return to a single column Tools panel, which might use space more efficiently on a large desktop display. Examine the status bar at the bottom of the work area on Windows or in the document window on Mac OS, and notice the percentage that appears on the far left. This represents the current enlargement view of the image, or the zoom level. Move the pointer over the Tools panel and hover it over the magnifying glass icon until a tooltip appears. The tooltip displays the tool's name, the Zoom tool, and the keyboard shortcut, Z. Click the Zoom tool icon in the Tools panel to select it. Move the pointer over the document window. The pointer now looks like a tiny magnifying glass with a plus sign in the center of the glass. Click anywhere in the document window. The image enlarges to a preset percentage level, which replaces the previous value in the status bar. If you click again, the zoom advances to the next preset level, up to a maximum of 12,800%. Hold down the Alt key on Windows or the Option key on Mac OS so that the Zoom tool pointer appears with a minus sign in the center of the magnifying glass, and then click anywhere in the image. Then release the Alt or Option key. Now the view zooms out to a lower preset magnification so you can see more of the image but in less detail. If Scrubby Zoom is selected in the Options bar, click anywhere on the image and drag the Zoom tool to the right. The image enlarges. Drag the Zoom tool to the left to zoom out. Deselect Scrubby Zoom in the Options bar if it's selected. Then, using the Zoom tool, drag a rectangle to enclose part of the rose blossom. The image enlarges so that the area you enclosed in your rectangle now fills the entire document window. Click Fit Screen in the Options bar to see the entire image again. One of the most common edits you're likely to make is to brighten an image taken with a digital camera or phone. You'll brighten this image by changing its brightness and contrast values. In the Layers panel on the right side of the workspace, make sure the Rose layer is selected. In the Adjustments panel, above the Layers panel in the panel dock, click the Brightness Contrast icon to add a Brightness Contrast Adjustment layer. The Properties panel opens, displaying the brightness and contrast settings. In the Properties panel, move the brightness slider to 98 and the contrast slider to 18. The image of the rose brightens. In the Layers panel, click the eye icon for the Brightness Contrast Adjustment layer to hide its effect, and then click the eye icon again to show the effect. Double-click the Properties panel tab to collapse it. Choose Save As from the File menu, name the file 01working.psd, and click OK or Save. Click OK in the Photoshop Format Options dialog box. Saving the file with a different name ensures that the original file, the 01start.psd file, remains unchanged. That way you can return to it if you want to start over. You've just completed your first task in Photoshop. Your image is bright and punchy and ready for a birthday card. In the Layers panel, click the Visibility column for the Ribbons layer to make the layer visible. When a layer is visible, an eye icon appears in that column. A ribbon with Happy Birthday written on it appears in the document window. Select the Ribbons layer in the Layers panel so that it's the active layer. Select the Eyedropper tool in the Tools panel. Click the blue area in the Happy Birthday ribbon to sample a blue color. The foreground color changes in the Tools panel and the Color panel. Anything you paint will be this color until you change the foreground color again. You can change the unit of measure you use to work in Photoshop. This greeting card will be printed, so you'll work in inches. Choose Edit, Preferences, Units and Rulers on Windows, or Photoshop. Units and Rulers on Windows, or Photoshop Preferences, Units and Rulers on Mac OS. In the Units section, choose Inches from the Rulers menu and click OK. Change the view as needed, zoom or scroll, so that you can clearly see the lower third of the card. Select the Rectangular Marquee tool in the Tools panel. The Rectangular Marquee tool selects rectangular areas. You'll learn more about selection tools in Lesson 3. Drag the Rectangular Marquee tool to create a selection about 0.75 inches tall and 2.5 inches wide, ending at the right edge of the card. As you drag the tool, Photoshop displays the width and height of the selected area. It's okay if the size of your selection is a little different. A selection border is indicated by a dashed line called a selection marquee, also called marching ants, which is animated so you can see it more easily. Select the Brush tool in the Tools panel. In the Document window, right-click on Windows or Control-click on Mac OS anywhere in the image to open the Brush tool context menu. Context menus usually show a list of commands, but in this case it's a pop-up panel with options for the Brush tool. Click the arrow next to the General Brushes preset group folder to expand it. Select the first brush, the soft round one, and change the size to 65 pixels. Press Enter or Return to close the context menu. Make sure the ribbons layer is still selected in the Layers panel. Then drag the brush tool across the selected area until it's fully painted blue. Don't worry about staying within the selection. You can't affect anything outside the selection as you paint. When the bar is colored in, choose Deselect from the Select menu so that nothing is selected. The selection is gone, but the blue bar remains on the ribbons layer. You'll use the polygonal lasso tool to remove a triangular notch from the color bar so that it matches the ribbon at the top of the card. Position the pointer over the third tool from the top and the tip appears. The tooltip identifies the lasso tool with the keyboard shortcut of L. Select the polygonal lasso tool, which is hidden behind the lasso tool, using one of these methods. Either press and hold the mouse button over the lasso tool to open the pop-up list of hidden tools, or Alt-click on Windows or Option-click on Mac OS on the Tool button in the Tools panel to cycle through the hidden tools until the polygonal lasso tool is selected, or press Shift-L, which cycles between the tools in the group. Move the pointer over the left edge of the blue color bar that you just painted. Click just to the left of the upper left corner of the bar to start your selection. You should begin your selection just outside the colored area. Move the cursor to the right a little more than 1/4 inch and click about halfway down between the top and bottom of the bar. You are creating the first side of the triangle. It doesn't need to be perfect. Click just to the left of the bottom left corner of the bar to create the second side of the triangle. And then click the point where you started to finish the triangle. Press the Delete key on your keyboard to delete the selected area from the colored bar, creating a notch for your ribbon. Choose Deselect from the Select menu to deselect the area you deleted. The ribbon is ready. Now you can add a name to your birthday card. Next, you'll use the Options bar to select the text properties and then type the name. In the Tools panel, select the Horizontal Type tool. The buttons and menus in the Options bar now relate to the Type tool. In the Options bar, select a font you like from the first pop-up menu. I'll use Minion Pro Italic, but you can use another font if you prefer. Specify 32 point for the font size. You can specify 32 points by typing directly in the font size text box and pressing enter or return, or by scrubbing the font size menu label. And you can also choose a standard font size from the font size pop-up menu. Click the Swatches tab to bring that panel forward if it's not already visible. Then click the triangle next to the pastel preset group to expand it, and select any light colored swatch. I'm going to choose pastel yellow. The color you select appears in two places: as the foreground color in the Tools panel and in the text color swatch in the Options bar. The Swatches panel is one easy way to select a color. Later you'll learn other ways to select a color in Photoshop. Click the horizontal type tool once anywhere on the left side of the colored bar. Lorem ipsum placeholder text appears as a sample of the current type specifications. It's selected by default, so you can immediately type over it. Type a name. It replaces the placeholder text. Don't worry if the text isn't positioned well, you'll correct that later. Click the check mark icon in the Options bar to commit the text. While the pastel yellow looks okay, let's try a specific color that sets the name apart from the other ribbon's text. It's easier to find it if you change the Swatches panel display. Click the menu button on the Swatches panel to open the panel menu and choose Small List. With the horizontal type tool, double-click the text. The text becomes selected. In the Swatches panel, click the triangle next to the light group of swatch presets to expand it, and then select the light yellow-orange swatch. Click the checkmark button to commit and deselect the text. Now the text appears in the orange color. Choose Undo Edit Type Layer from the Edit menu, or press Ctrl-Z on Windows or Command-Z on Mac OS to undo your last action. The name returns to its previous color. Now choose Redo Edit Type Layer from the Edit menu, or press Ctrl-Shift-Z on Windows or Command-Shift-Z on Mac OS to reapply the orange color to the name. Each time you use the undo command, it reverses one more step. So if you want to undo 5 steps, you can apply the undo command or its keyboard shortcut 5 times. The redo command works the same way. If you want to switch back and forth between the current and previous steps you did, choose Toggle Last State from the Edit menu, or press Ctrl-Alt-Z on Windows or Command-Option-Z on Mac OS to go back. And then choose the same command again to go forward. Applying Toggle Last State multiple times is a great way to see a before and after comparison of your last edit. Once the name is back to the color you'd like it to be, use the Move tool to drag the name so it's centered in the blue bar. Save the file. Your birthday card is done. By default, the panels, dialog boxes, and background in Photoshop are dark. You can lighten the interface or make other changes in the Photoshop Preferences dialog box. Choose Edit Preferences Interface on Windows or Photoshop Preferences Interface on Mac OS. Select a different color theme or make other changes. When you select a different theme, you can see the changes immediately. You can also select specific colors for different screen modes and change other interface settings in this dialog box. When you're satisfied with the changes, click OK. Start Photoshop and then simultaneously hold down Control, Alt, and Shift on Windows or Command, Option, Shift on Mac OS to reset the default settings. When prompted, click Yes to confirm that you want to delete the Adobe Photoshop settings file. Choose Browse in Bridge from the File menu. If you're prompted to enable the Photoshop extension in Bridge, click Yes or OK. Adobe Bridge opens, displaying a collection of panels, menus, and buttons. Select the Folders tab in the upper left corner, and then browse to the Lessons folder you downloaded onto your hard disk so that the lessons in the Lessons folder appear in the Content panel. With the Lessons folder still selected in the Folders panel, choose Add to Favorites from the File menu. The Favorites panel lets you quickly access files, folders, applications, and other assets that you frequently use. Click the Favorites tab to open the panel, and click the Lessons folder to open it. Then in the Content panel, double-click the Lesson 02 folder. Thumbnail previews of the folder contents appear in the Content panel. Compare the 02start.tiff and 02end.psd files. To enlarge the thumbnails in the Content panel, drag the thumbnail slider at the bottom of the Bridge window to the right. In the 02start.tiff file, notice that the image is crooked, the colors are relatively dull, and the image has a green color cast and a distracting crease. You'll fix all of these problems in this lesson and a few others. You'll start by cropping and straightening the image. Double-click the 02start.tiff thumbnail to open the file in Photoshop. Click OK if you see the Embedded Profile Mismatch dialog box. In Photoshop, choose Save As from the File menu. Choose Photoshop from the Format menu and name the file 02working.psd. Then click Save. You'll use the Crop tool to straighten, trim, and scale the photograph. By default, cropping deletes cropped pixels. In the Tools panel, select the Crop tool. Crop handles appear, and a crop shield covers the area outside the cropping region to help you focus your attention on the cropped area. In the Options bar, choose Width by Height by Resolution from the Select a Preset Aspect Ratio or Crop Size menu. Ratio is the default value. A crop overlay appears. In the Options bar, type 7 inches for the width, 7 inches for the height, and 200 pixels per inch for the resolution. First, you'll straighten the image. Click the Straighten icon in the options bar. The pointer changes to the Straighten tool. Click the top left corner of the image where the sky ends. Press the mouse button as you drag a straight line across the top edge, and then release. Photoshop straightens the image so that the line you drew is parallel with the top of the image area. You drew a line across the top of the photo, but you can also draw it along anything in the image that should be perfectly vertical or horizontal. Now you'll trim the white border and scale the image. Drag the corners of the crop rectangle inward to crop out the white border. If you need to adjust the position of the photo inside the crop, position the pointer within the crop rectangle and drag the photo. Press Enter or Return to accept the crop. The image is now cropped, straightened, sized, and positioned according to the crop tool options you used. If the image dimensions are not already displayed in the status area at the bottom of the application window, click the arrow there and choose Document Dimensions from the pop-up menu that appears. You can use the status bar display to monitor various aspects of Photoshop or the current document. Before cropping, the image was 2160 by 2160 pixels at 240 pixels per inch. After cropping to the dimensions and resolution specified in Step 3, Document Dimensions shows that the image is now 1400 by 1400 pixels at 200 pixels per inch. Choose Save from the File menu to save your work. Click OK if you see the Photoshop Format Options dialog box. You'll use curves and levels adjustment layers to remove the color cast and adjust the color and tone in the image. The curves or levels options may look complex, but don't be intimidated. You'll work with them more in later lessons. For now, you'll take advantage of their tools to quickly brighten and adjust the tone of the image. In the Adjustments panel, click the Curves icon. This adds a Curves adjustment layer. Its controls appear in the Properties panel. Select the White Point tool on the left side of the Properties panel. The White Point tool defines what color value should be made a neutral white. Once defined, all other colors and tones shift accordingly. When done correctly, this is a quick way to remove a color cast and correct image brightness. To set an accurate white point, click an area of the image that should be the brightest neutral area of the image that contains detail. Not a blown out area like the sun or a lamp, and not a specular highlight such as a reflection of sunlight on chrome. Click a white stripe on the girl's dress. Clicking the white stripe with the White Point tool shifts the color balance and brightness based on how far the sampled color is from neutral white, improving the image. Try clicking different white areas, such as the child's sailor dress or sock, or a stripe on the woman's dress. You'll typically get the most balanced result by clicking the area that was closest to neutral bright white in the real world. Now you'll use the Levels adjustment layer to refine the tonal range of the image. In the Adjustments panel, if needed, click its tab to make it visible. Click the Levels icon to add a Levels adjustment layer. For both curves and levels, the Properties panel displays a histogram, a graph displaying the distribution of tonal values in the image, from black on the left to white on the right. For levels, the left triangle under the histogram represents the black point, the total level you want to set as the darkest in the image. And the right triangle represents the white point, the tonal level you want to set as the lightest in the image. And the middle triangle represents the midtones. Drag the left triangle, the black point, under the histogram to the right, where significant shadow tones start to appear. My value is 15. All tones less than 15 become black. Drag the middle triangle a little to the right to adjust the midtones. My value was 0.9. Now you'll flatten the image so it's easier to work with while you touch it up. Flattening an image merges all of its layers into the background layer. Flatten only if you no longer need the flexibility of adjusting the edits you previously made using separate layers. Choose Flatten Image from the Layer menu. The adjustment layers merge with the background layer. Zoom in to see the crease clearly. In the Tools panel, select the Spot Healing Brush tool. In the Options bar, open the Brush pop-up panel, specify a brush with a size of about 25 pixels and 100% hardness, and make sure Content Aware is selected. In the Document window, position the Spot Healing Brush at the top of the crease and then drag it down along the crease. If it's easier to repair the crease with multiple shorter strokes, that's okay. As you drag, the stroke at first appears black, but when you release the mouse, the painted area is healed. Zoom in to see the white hair in the upper right area of the image. Then use the Spot Healing Brush to paint over the hair. Zoom out if necessary to see the full sky. Then click the Spot Healing Brush wherever there are unwanted spots you want to heal. Save your work so far. In the Tools panel, select the Object Selection tool and hover it over each person in the photo without clicking. Each person highlights when hovered. The Object Selection tool automatically detects objects. Clicking a highlighted area selects it. But if the highlight doesn't include the entire subject, the selection will be incomplete. To help ensure a more complete selection, you'll drag the tool instead. Drag the Object Selection tool around the boy and then release the mouse. The resulting selection fits the entire boy and his shadow. If some outer edges aren't fully selected, such as the boy's hair perhaps, expanding the selection is a quick way to include them. Choose Select, Modify, Expand. Enter 2 for pixels and then click OK. In the Tools panel, select the Patch tool, hidden under the Spot Healing Brush tool. In the Options bar, choose Content Aware from the Patch menu and type 4 into the Structure slider. Position the pointer within the selection and drag it to the left to replace the boy with the wall and background, without including the woman and child. Watch the patch preview and release the mouse button when the patch looks good. Choose Deselect from the Select menu. The effect is impressive, but not quite perfect. You'll touch up the results next. You'll use the Clone Stamp tool to smooth out some irregularities in the height of the bridge wall and the windows on the building. Select the Clone Stamp tool in the Tools panel and select a 60 pixel brush with 30% hardness. Make sure that the Aligned option is selected. Move the Clone Stamp tool to an area where the top of the bridge wall is smooth. That's the area you want to copy to smooth out the patched area. Alt-click on Windows or Option-click on Mac OS to sample that location as a source point. When you press Alt or Option, the pointer appears as target crosshairs. Drag the Clone Stamp tool across the top of the bridge wall in the patched area to even it out, and then release the mouse button. Each time you click with the Clone Stamp tool, it begins again with a new source point, maintaining its position relative to the first stroke you made. That is, if you begin painting farther right, it samples from stone that is farther right than the original source point. That's because Aligned is selected in the Options bar. Deselect Aligned if you want to start from the same source point each time. Select a source point where the bottom of the bridge wall is even, and then drag the Clone Stamp tool across the bottom of the wall where you patched it. Select a smaller brush size and deselect Aligned. Then select a source point over the rightmost windows in the lowest row on the building you patched. Click across to create accurate windows there. Repeat this to make any adjustments you want to apply to the lowest area of the building and the wall that runs in front of it. Look carefully for areas that obviously repeat as a result of the cloning and retouch them. If you like, you can use a smaller brush size to touch up the stones in the patched portion of the wall. Save your work. The last task you might want to do when retouching a photo is to sharpen the image. There are several ways to sharpen an image in Photoshop, but the Smart Sharpen filter gives you the most control. Because sharpening can emphasize artifacts, you'll remove those first. Zoom in to about 400% to see the boy's shirt clearly. The colored dots you see are artifacts of the scanning process. Choose Filter, Noise, Dust and Scratches. In the Dust and Scratches dialog box, leave the default settings with a radius of 1 pixel and threshold at 0, and click OK. The threshold value determines how dissimilar the pixels should be before they are eliminated. The radius value determines the size of the area searched for dissimilar pixels. The default values are great for tiny dots of color like the ones in this image. Now that the artifacts are gone, you can sharpen the image. Choose Filter, Sharpen, Smart Sharpen. In the Smart Sharpen dialog box, make sure that Preview is selected so you can see the effect of settings you adjust in the document window. You can drag inside the Preview window in the dialog box to see different parts of the image, or you can use the magnification buttons below the thumbnail to zoom in and out. Make sure Lens Blur is chosen in the Remove menu. You can choose to remove Lens Blur, Gaussian Blur, or Motion Blur in the Smart Sharpen dialog box. Lens Blur provides finer sharpening of detail and reduced sharpening halos. Gaussian Blur increases contrast along the edges in an image. Motion Blur reduces the effects of blur that resulted from the camera or the subject moving when the photo is taken. Drag the Amount slider to about 60% to sharpen the image. Drag the Radius slider to about 1.5. The radius value determines the number of pixels surrounding the edge pixels that affect the sharpening. The higher the resolution, the higher the radius setting should usually be. When you're satisfied with the result, click OK to apply the Smart Sharpen filter. Choose Save from the File menu and then close the project file. Your image is ready to share or print. You can get great results converting a color image to black and white with or without a tint in Photoshop. Choose Open from the File menu and navigate to the bike.tif file in the Lesson 2 folder and click Open. In the Adjustments panel, click the Black and White button to add a black and white adjustment layer. Adjust the color sliders to change the lightness of different colors, similar to the effects of using color filters with black and white film, but with more control. You can also experiment with options from the preset menu, such as darker or infrared. Or select the targeted adjustment tool in the upper left corner of the Properties panel, position it over a color you want to adjust, and drag horizontally. The tool moves the sliders associated with the original color of the pixels where you started dragging. For example, dragging on the red bike frame adjusts the lightness of all red areas. If you want to colorize the entire photo with a single hue, select Tint in the Properties panel. Then click the Color swatch and select a tint color. Start Photoshop and then simultaneously hold down Control Alt Shift on Windows or Command Option Shift on Mac OS to restore the default preferences. When prompted, click Yes to confirm that you want to delete the Adobe Photoshop settings file. Choose Browse in Bridge from the File menu to open Adobe Bridge. In the Favorites panel, click the Lessons folder. Then double-click the Lesson 3 folder in the Content panel to see its contents. Study the 03end.psd file. Move the thumbnail slider to the right if you want to see the image in more detail. In Bridge, double-click the 03start.psd thumbnail to open the image file in Photoshop. You've opened the document from your local storage. Choose Save As from the File menu and click Save to Creative Cloud. If you see the standard Save As dialog box, first click the Save to Cloud Documents button. Rename the file 03 Working Cloud and click Save. The file is uploaded to Cloud Documents. In the Document Window tab, you can see a cloud icon before the file name, and the file name now ends in .psdc. Close the document. Now you'll open the cloud document. Again, this will be slightly different than opening a document from local storage. In the Photoshop home screen, select Your Files on the left side. It lists cloud documents that you've uploaded using your Adobe ID. You can also select Home, where the recent list shows local documents and cloud documents you recently opened. Click 03 Working Cloud, the file you just saved. This downloads the file to your computer and opens it in Photoshop. If you're editing a Photoshop Cloud PSDC document, how can you provide that file to a client who requires a PSD file? By saving the cloud document to your own local storage. Again, the conversion is automatic, so it's easy and seamless. Choose Save As from the File menu. If you see the Cloud Documents dialog box, click Save on your computer at the bottom to see the conventional Save As dialog box. Notice that the file name extension is now PSD, because you're saving this document to your local storage, not to Cloud Documents. Name the document 03 Working.psd and save it into the Lesson 3 folder. Now you have your own local PSD format copy that you can distribute to others and back up like any other local document. For this lesson, you can continue with your local copy, 03 Working.psd, or you can close the local PSD copy and instead open and work with your Cloud Documents copy, the one named 03 Working Cloud.psdc. Select the Zoom tool in the Tools panel and then zoom in so you can see the entire sand dollar in detail. Select the Magic Wand tool hidden under the Object Selection tool. In the Options bar, confirm that the tolerance value is 32. This value determines the range of colors the wand selects. Click the Magic Wand tool on the red background outside the sand dollar. The Magic Wand tool perfectly selected the red background because all of the colors in the background are similar enough to the pixel you clicked, within the 32 levels specified in the tolerance setting. But it's the shell we want, so let's start over. Choose Deselect from the Select menu. Position the Magic Wand tool over the sand dollar and click. Look carefully at the animated selection marquee that appears over the sand dollar. If this was a perfect selection, the selection marquee would tightly follow the outer edge of the sand dollar. But notice that some interior areas of the sand dollar show selection marquees because their colors differ from the color you clicked by more than 32 levels, the tolerance setting. The current selection isn't working because it doesn't include all interior colors. When you want to select a subject that's mostly the same color and value against a relatively solid background, you can often solve this by increasing the tolerance value. But the more complex the subject or background, the more likely a wide tolerance value will also select unwanted parts of the background. In that case, it's usually better to use a different selection tool, such as the Quick Selection tool. You'll do that next, but first let's deselect the current selection. So choose Deselect from the Select menu. Select the Quick Selection tool in the Tools panel. It's grouped with the Object Selection tool and Magic Wand tool. Select Enhance Edge in the Options bar. Selecting Enhance Edge should improve the quality of the selection with edges that are truer to the object. If you're using a slower or older computer, you might notice a slight delay when using Enhance Edge. Click or drag within the sand dollar. Don't cross over into the background. The Quick Selection tool looks at what content is probably connected to the area where you clicked or dragged and finds the full edge automatically, selecting the entire sand dollar. The sand dollar is simple enough that the Quick Selection tool can isolate it instantly. When the Quick Selection tool doesn't complete the selection initially, click or drag over areas you want to add to the selection. Leave the selection active so that you can use it in the next exercise. If the sand dollar is not still selected, repeat the previous exercise to select it. Zoom out so you can see both the shadow box and the sand dollar. Select the Move tool. Notice that the sand dollar remains selected. Drag the selected area, the sand dollar, to the upper left area of the frame, which is labeled A. Position it over the silhouette in the frame, leaving the lower left part of the silhouette showing as a shadow. Choose Deselect from the Select menu, and then choose Save from the File menu. Select the Object Selection tool, which is grouped with the Quick Selection tool and Magic Wand tool. Drag a selection around the piece of coral. It doesn't have to be precise or centered. What's important is that it's a relatively tight selection with a small amount of space between the coral and the edges of the selection marquee. You're simply showing Photoshop which object you want to select. The Object Selection tool analyzes the area inside the rectangular selection, finds the object, and creates a selection marquee along its complicated edge. Select the Move tool and drag the coral to the area of the shadow box labeled B, positioning it so that a shadow appears to the left of and below the coral. Choose Deselect from the Select menu, and then save your work. Select the Zoom tool and click the plate of shells at the bottom of the document window to zoom in to at least 100% view. Use 200% view if the entire plate of shells will still fit in the document window on your screen. Select the Elliptical Marquee tool hidden under the Rectangular Marquee tool. Move the pointer over the plate of shells and drag diagonally across the oval plate to create a selection, but do not release the mouse button. It's okay if your selection does not match the plate shape yet. If you accidentally release the mouse button, draw the selection again. In most cases, including this one, the new selection replaces the previous one. While still holding down the mouse button, hold down the space bar and continue to drag the selection. Instead of resizing the selection, now you're moving it. Position the selection so that it more closely aligns with the plate. Carefully release the space bar, but not the mouse button, and continue to drag, trying to make the shape and size of the selection match the oval plate of shells as closely as possible. If necessary, hold down the space bar again and drag to move the selection marquee into position around the plate of shells. When the selection border is positioned appropriately, release the mouse button. Choose Fit on Screen from the View menu, or use the slider in the Navigator panel to reduce the zoom view so that you can see all of the objects in the document window. Leave the elliptical marquee tool and the selection active for the next exercise. Now you'll use a keyboard shortcut to move the selected pixels onto the shadow box. The shortcut temporarily tool to the Move tool, so you don't need to select it from the Tools panel. If the plate of shells is not still selected, repeat the previous exercise to select it. With the elliptical marquee tool selected in the Tools panel, press Control on Windows or Command on Mac OS and hover the pointer within the selection. Continue to hold down the key for the next step. The pointer icon now includes a pair of scissors, indicating that the selection will be cut from its current location. While continuing to hold down the Control or Command key, drag the plate of shells onto the area of the shadow box labeled C. You'll use another technique to nudge the oval plate into the exact position in a minute. Release the mouse button and the key, but don't deselect the plate of shells. You'll use the arrow keys to nudge the plate of shells. Before you begin, make sure that the plate of shells is still selected in the document window. Select the Move tool and press the up arrow key on your keyboard a few times to move the oval upward. Notice that each time you press the arrow key, the plate of shells moves 1 pixel. Experiment by pressing the other arrow keys to see how they affect the selection. Hold down the Shift key as you press an arrow key. When you hold down the Shift key, the selected pixels move 10 pixels every time you press an arrow key. Sometimes the selection marquee can distract you as you make adjustments. You can hide the edges of a selection temporarily without actually deselecting, and then display the selection border once you've completed the adjustments. Choose View, Show Selection Edges to deselect the command, hiding the selection border around the plate of shells. Use the arrow keys to nudge the plate of shells until it's positioned over the silhouette so that there's a shadow on the left and bottom of the plate. Then choose View, Show Selection Edges to reveal the selection border again. Choose Deselect from the Select menu, or press Control D on Windows or Command D on Mac OS. Choose Save from the File menu to save your work so far. If the window magnification is below 100%, select the Zoom tool and click the muscle to zoom in to at least 100%. Select the Lasso tool. Starting at the lower left section of the muscle, drag around the rounded end of the muscle, tracing the shape as accurately as possible. Do not release the mouse button. When you reach a corner or straight part of the edge, press the Alt key on Windows or Option key on Mac OS, and then release the mouse button so that the lasso pointer changes to the polygonal lasso shape. Do not release the Alt or Option key. Begin clicking along the end of the muscle to place anchor points, following the contours of the muscle. Be sure to hold down the Alt or Option key throughout this process. This lets you create perfectly straight segments along the selection. The selection border automatically stretches like a rubber band between anchor points. When you reach the tip of the muscle, hold down the mouse button as you release the Alt or Option key. The pointer again appears as the lasso icon. Carefully drag around the tip of the muscle, holding down the mouse button. When you finish tracing the tip and reach the straight segments along the lower side of the muscle, first press Alt or Option again, and then release the mouse button. Click along the straight segments of the lower side of the muscle as needed. Continue to trace the straight and curved muscle edges until you arrive back at the starting point of your selection at the left end of the muscle. Click the starting point of the selection and then release Alt or Option. The muscle is now entirely selected. Leave the muscle selected for the next exercise. Now you'll rotate the muscle. Before you begin, make sure the muscle is still selected. Then choose Fit on Screen from the View menu to resize the document window to fit on your screen. Press Control on Windows or Command on Mac OS as you drag the selected muscle to the section of the shadow box labeled D. The pointer changes to the Move tool icon when you press Control on Windows or Command on Mac OS. Choose Edit, Transform, Rotate. The muscle and selection marquee are enclosed in a bounding box. Move the pointer outside the bounding box so that it becomes a curved two-headed arrow. Drag to rotate the muscle to a 90-degree angle. You can verify the angle in the transformation values display next to the pointer or in the rotate box in the options bar. Press Enter or Return to commit the transformation. If necessary, select the Move tool and drag to reposition the muscle, leaving a shadow to match the others. When you're satisfied, choose Deselect from the Select menu. Choose Save from the File menu. You'll use the magnetic lasso tool to select the Nautilus so that you can move it to the shadow box. Select the Zoom tool and click the Nautilus to zoom in to at least 100%. Select the magnetic lasso tool hidden under the lasso tool. Click once along the left edge of the Nautilus and then move the magnetic lasso tool along the edge to trace its outline. Even though you're not holding down the mouse button, the tool snaps to the edge of the Nautilus and automatically adds fastening points. When you reach the left side of the Nautilus again, double-click to return the magnetic lasso tool to the starting point, closing the selection. Or you can move the magnetic lasso tool over the starting point and click once. Double-click the hand tool to fit the entire image in the window. Select the Move tool and drag the Nautilus onto its silhouette in the section of the frame labeled E, leaving a shadow below it and on the left side. Choose Deselect from the Select menu, and then choose Save from the File menu. In some cases, it's easier to make elliptical or rectangular selections by drawing a selection from an object's center point. You'll use this technique to select the head of the screw for the shadow box corners. Select the Zoom tool and zoom in on the screw to a magnification of about 300%. Make sure that the entire screw head is visible in your document window. Select the elliptical marquee tool in the Tools panel. Move the pointer to the approximate center of the screw. Click and begin dragging. Then, without releasing the mouse button, press Alt on Windows or Option on Mac OS as you continue dragging the selection to the outer edge of the screw. The selection is centered over its starting point. When you have the entire screw head selected, release the mouse button first, and then release Alt or Option, and the Shift key if you used it. Do not deselect because you'll use this selection in the next exercise. If necessary, reposition the selection border using one of the methods you learned earlier. If you accidentally release the Alt or Option key before you release the mouse button, select the screw again. You'll start by moving the screw, but it's too large for the space. You'll need to resize it as well. Before you begin, make sure that the screw is still selected. If it's not, reselect it by completing the previous exercise. Then choose Fit on Screen from the View menu so that the entire image fits within the document window. Select the Move tool in the Tools panel. Position the pointer within the screw selection. The pointer becomes an arrow with a pair of scissors, indicating that dragging the selection will cut it from its current location and move it to the new location. Drag the screw onto the lower right corner of the shadow box. Choose Edit, Transform, Scale. A bounding box appears around the selection. Drag one of the corner points inward to reduce the screw to about 40% of its original size or until it is small enough to sit on the shadow box frame. As you resize the object, the selection marquee resizes too. Both resize proportionally by default. Press Enter or Return to commit the change and remove the transformation bounding box. Use the Move tool to reposition the screw after resizing it so that it's centered in the corner of the shadow box frame. Leaving the screw selected, choose Save from the File menu to save your work. You can move and duplicate a selection at the same time. You'll copy the screw for the other 3 corners of the frame. If the screw is no longer selected, reselect it now using the techniques you learned earlier. Then, with the Move tool selected, press Alt on Windows or Option on Mac OS as you position the pointer inside the screw selection. The pointer changes, displaying the usual black arrow and an additional white arrow, which indicates that a duplicate will be made when you move the selection. Continue holding down the Alt or Option key as you drag a duplicate of the screw straight up to the top right corner of the frame. Release the mouse button and the Alt or Option key, but don't deselect the duplicate image. Then hold down Alt and Shift on Windows or Option and Shift on Mac OS and drag a new copy of the screw straight left to the upper left corner of the frame. Pressing the Shift key as you move a selection constrains the movement horizontally or vertically in 45-degree increments. Repeat this step to drag a 4th screw to the lower left corner of the frame. When you're satisfied with the position of the 4th screw, choose Deselect from the Select menu, and then choose Save from the File menu. Now that your composition is in place, you'll crop the image to a final size. You can use either the Crop tool or the Crop command to crop an image. Select the Crop tool, or press C to switch from the current tool to the Crop tool. Photoshop displays a crop boundary around the entire image. In the Options bar, make sure Ratio is selected in the Preset pop-up menu, and that there are no ratio values specified. If there are, click Clear. Then confirm that Delete Cropped Pixels is selected. When ratio is selected but no ratio values are specified, you can freely crop the image to any proportions. Drag the crop handles so that the shadow box is in the highlighted area, omitting the backgrounds from the original objects at the bottom of the image. Crop the frame so that there is an even area of white around it. When you're satisfied with the position of the crop area, click the Commit Current Crop Operation button in the Options bar. Choose Save from the File menu to save your work. You've used several different selection tools to move all the seashells into place. The shadow box is complete.